Update 1.5 is just around the corner and Arma Reforger is going to change forever. But there's a catch. In this video, we will go over what will be included in the update, the changes to the game that these things will bring, and then take a look at a few things that I think most people probably haven't considered. We won't touch on everything listed in the changelog because this video would be an hour long. Instead, we will focus on some of the more exciting and most importantly, game-changing aspects. We will kick things off by taking a look at the new in-game assets coming to Reforger. I don't think any of these will be particularly game-changing, but who doesn't like new toys? We've got the RPG-22, the RPG-75, new TT-SKO uniforms for the Soviets, and the much-loved Tiger Stripe uniform for the US side, as well as the PG-7VM and VR rounds for the RPG-7. Both sides will also be getting their own anti-personnel mines, with the PMN-4 for the Russians and the M14 for the US. Out of all these new assets, obviously I believe the AP mines will bring about the most change in the way people play the game, but it probably won't be very significant. Mines take patience and planning, both of which seem to be in short supply amongst the player base. We will now move on to the general section, and even if this was all the update included, it would still be massive. We have some crazy changes here, but this isn't even the best of it. First up in the general section is the ability to move on vehicles while they are in motion. This is pretty epic, even just at face value. No longer will you be left helpless when your Vic is ambushed and you are stuck in your seat waiting for your turn to dismount. But there may be more to it. For example, just recently there was a really nice C-130 mod released. Is this new feature going to allow us to do realistic paradrop procedures where we can actually stand up and jump out of the plane rather than just hitting a button to initiate the dismount animation? Will we actually be able to unload an Mi-8 packed with dudes quickly rather than the bird being stuck on the ground for upwards of a minute while everyone gets out? To be honest, I don't know. I haven't had the chance to test this with anyone, but I'm assuming that at the very least, this feature will lay the groundwork so that modders can much more easily make these things a reality. Next up is the ability to assemble stationary turret weapons and mortars from parts. Similar to what we had in Arma 3, one guy carries the bipod or tripod while the other carries the tube or gun. This will make these weapon systems much more mobile and hopefully see an increase in how often they are used. Pair this with the fact that we are also getting the ability to build sandbag objects from sandbag items, and we now have the recipe for small teams to establish fighting positions in the field, creating even more dynamic situations and increasing the number of tactical options available to the player. The next addition is an interesting one. Players will now be able to salvage wrecked vehicles for supplies using the repair truck. This obviously won't be more efficient than just running supplies, so it is not likely that we're going to see guys purely on salvage missions. But it does add depth to the game's engineering aspects, and may mean that it is now worthwhile having a dedicated engineer in the field carrying out repairs and using this new feature to keep himself stocked up with supplies in order to do his job. This next addition is the Bush Wookiee's worst nightmare. Foliage now moves when characters or vehicles pass through it. I don't really need to say too much about this one, but I think most would agree that it is a much needed change. Although I would have liked to see it a little more obvious and vehicles actually flatten bushes when they pass over them, this is still a step in the right direction. Okay, so this next one is a pretty big deal for me. In 1.5 we now have HOTAS support for helicopter flight, which is pretty freaking epic. Now, we still have the same flight model, which is, I'm definitely looking forward to an advanced flight model. Hopefully that comes to vanilla, but if not, having this HOTAS support I think will lay down a lot of the groundwork for modders to come up with an advanced flight model of their own. And the current flight model we have with HOTAS feels very much like the simple flight model on Arma 3. For those who don't know, on Arma 3 there was a simple and advanced flight model. The advanced flight model was a lot more difficult. It wasn't, I wouldn't say DCS level of simulation, definitely not, but you did have things like vortex ring state. I'm not a big fan of well, this stuff, you know, the old flamboyance. Oh god, it drives me nuts. Just get the thing on the ground and get the troops off, would you? But I know a lot of people love it, but anyway, I got sidetracked. As I was saying, in Arma 3, most servers would run the option so the pilot could choose which flight model they used. They could use simple or advanced, it was completely up to them, and it made no difference to anyone else in the game. We will now move on to the playable content section, and this is where the really juicy stuff is that's going to change the conflict game mode in a big way, and in my opinion, definitely for the better. But like I said at the start of the video, there is a catch, and we will get to that, but first I will try to explain how all this works. There is a lot to cover here, and most of the additions work together to form a cohesive change to the way conflict is played, so I think the best thing is to go through the list quickly and then come back to the key points. Added HQ commander role, players can volunteer or vote for commander. This is a major one that we will come back to. Added conflict establishing bases. Added conflict group types and associated loadouts, together with the ability to vote for a squad leader. I want to come back to this one because I feel like people will get their knickers in a twist if they misinterpret it. Added support requests can be made by squads through the map. Added military supply allocation by rank in conflict, limiting the amount of supplies that a single soldier can use. Added command post in HQ tent where commander can control logistics, operations and combat. Added recon type objective. Added AI transport groups which can be sent by commander to resupply bases, controllable through the logistics command post. Okay, so the HQ commander role is the backbone of pretty much all these additions. As mentioned, any player can volunteer for the role and then get voted in. Once a player has been elected as commander, they then have access to the mentioned command post in the HQ tent. Here, they can set a range of different objectives for each squad, which will show up in the Objectives tab that you access by pressing J. Upon joining a server, you'll still have the deployment screen we're all used to, except they now have designated roles for squads, like Assault, Recon, Medic, etc. You still have the ability to create a new squad or group, but you will not be able to make a duplicate of a role that already exists unless that squad is full. For example, if the Assault squad has 5 out of 6 people, you will not be able to make another Assault squad. However, if the first Assault squad is full, you will be able to create another one. This is the part I wanted to make sure people understand because they might get upset otherwise. When you join one of these groups, for example the Assault group, before spawning you will be able to choose a role inside of that group. However, this only determines what preset loadout you spawn with. This does not mean that you cannot pull certain items out of the arsenal, you can still take whatever your rank allows. However, the added supply allocation by rank puts a cap on how many supplies you can use for your loadout. This cap obviously increases with rank. These are the changes every genuine milsim guy has been waiting for, and I believe Bohemia have nailed it. They had to walk a fine line here between guiding new and existing players towards playing the game the way it is intended to be played, keeping it accessible and not upsetting those who like to just go off and do their own thing. As much as I dislike that style of play and would prefer people use these new systems to have a proper platoon level experience, it is still a sandbox and people have grown accustomed to playing it that way, which finally leads me to the catch I mentioned at the start of the video. I played 2 very different matches of this new style of conflict that really stood out to me. In the first match, the commander was assigning objectives but never said a word on the radio. People were just wandering around with no purpose and spending an eternity at the arsenal, very much like people always have done in the past. There seemed to be virtually no change despite all these new systems. In the second match there was a different commander, who was assigning objectives and then communicating them to each squad on the radio, and something magical happened. Effective communication. I don't think there was a single instance of a squad not responding or not wanting to carry out the allocated objective. All the BS on the platoon channel stopped because nobody wanted to be the guy blocking up the frequency, and we absolutely steamrolled the other team who were in the chat complaining about no communication from their commander. And that's the catch. We have all these new systems to really create an awesome milsim experience that is easily accessible to new players. But because Bohemia wanted to not take away player freedom, which is understandable, These systems still rely on people to do the right thing and play the game the way it is intended to be played. Yes, there is a lot more pointing the player in the right direction now, such as on-screen hints explaining some of these things to new players, but at the end of the day, the player is still free to basically ignore all of this. So I think I will conclude this by saying, please, if you're a commander, use the radio. Communicate with your guys, and if you're not and you're just in a squad, join up with your squad. Use your mic, carry out the objectives assigned to you, and if you think things could be done better, then communicate that with the commander in a constructive manner. These tools really have the potential to turn conflict into something special, but everyone has to play their part. I'm Raiden, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.